Here we go. Buster Olney is at the airport in Kansas City. He is leaving where last night the Giants beat the Royals. And Buster, got to start with Madison Bumgarner and his dominating performance. Where does that rank, Buster?
That performance makes him the most pivotal World Series performer since the 1960s. Well, you can look back at that time and remember Mickey Lolich winning 3 games in the 68 World Series, or Bob Gibson 3 games in 67, or before that Lou Burdett 3 games in 1957, and maybe the most pivotal World Series performance ever, Christy Mathewson of the New York Giants in 1905. Now we're in an era of pitch counts and short relievers and starters not going more than twice through the lineup. To see what he did and hoist this team on his shoulders the way that he did throughout this month and then in World Series, it was unbelievable. And there's a ton of stats to love out of his performance. Lowest World Series ERA in history is 0.25. But the one to me that I'm always going to remember is 52 and 2/3 innings in the postseason. That is more than double any other pitcher in the postseason. Yordano Ventura had 25 and 1/3 innings. James Shields had 25 innings, and Tim Hudson had 21 innings. More than double any other pitcher. And he was just incredible in this World Series.
Buster Olney brought to you by Mohawk Army Navy with Armen and Levack on the team.
How did he just dial it up? I mean, he was good this year, very good, but this is great.
Yeah, he got better as the season was going on. And it's interesting because, we've got, I've told you guys some great Madison Bumgarner stories in recent weeks. I got more for you tonight. But the one thing that might surprise you is he's actually, from talking with his teammates, he's very precise about his mechanics. And he tries to make adjustments with his mechanics with that unusual delivery. And from what I hear from the staff, early in the year he was having some issues with those. He got those settled. And once you look at the numbers in the second half of how he performed and how he was dominant down the stretch and into October, it was amazing. And plus, he's 25 years old. He's got all of his knowledge that he's learned through these postseasons, and he's putting them to use. I didn't see the final numbers. I'll give you one example of his acumen. During the course of the regular season, he struck out a total of 51 hitters in which the last pitch was a slow curveball. Okay, that's 6 months of the regular season. Before last night's game, in the postseason, he had done that 22 times. So it was clear that, and Buster Posey told me that once he pitched that wild card game against the Pirates, he really began to use that slow curveball and understand how it could be a weapon. And he talked about how precise he was with it, spinning it so that it was bouncing in the dirt, were out of reach of the hitters, especially with 2 strikes, and hitters just could not adjust to it.
Buster, how surprised was San Francisco on Madison Bumgarner's performance last night, the way that he was able to stay in the game? It sounded like Bochy himself was pretty surprised at the innings that he just kept going.
Well, I think yes and no. I think they've been around him and have so much faith in him that they went into that situation thinking, you know what, we're just going to take him pitch by pitch. Maybe the best comparable was Pedro Martinez in 1999, pitching for Cleveland. He came into the game in relief, and basically in that situation, he threw 1 inning, and they asked how he was doing, and he just, as long as he was getting outs, they just left him out there, and he wound up throwing in that playoff game against Cleveland 6 no-hit innings. I think it was the same thing last night, where Bruce Bochy basically didn't know exactly how long he could go. He was going to go inning to inning with it, and he said last night after the game that he almost was purposely avoiding Bumgarner in the dugout after each half inning because he didn't want to have Bumgarner say, yeah, I'm tired. He was just watching the innings, and he gave Bochy a ton of credit because a lot of managers these days, would say, well, I scripted it out. The 7th inning belongs to this guy, 8th inning belongs to this guy, 9th inning belongs to this guy, and that's what I'm going with. What Bochy did was just watch the innings, and he said after the game that, each inning was just increasingly easy for him, and so because of that, he just left him out there. He managed what he saw in front of him and not what he scripted out before the game, and that's a credit to him.
Buster, there was a couple times the camera would go to the Giants bullpen, and you just see the guys sitting there. They got their jackets on. They're relaxing. But they almost look disappointed they weren't in the game. Is there any way that a guy like that goes, well, sure, I got a ring, but, man, I really wanted to be in that game?
No. I really think in fact, I saw, the guy who would be maybe most offended by how it played out, if, in theory, would be their closer, Santiago Casilla, and I saw him after the game on the field. He was weeping. He was so happy. And I think that Bumgarner is so modest and understated that no one in that clubhouse is offended by anything that he does and any credit that he gets. In fact, it was striking as the last out was made. I was watching this. Here Pablo Sandoval makes the last catch, and he lies on the ground, and you guys will see this in the replay. Everyone runs past him, and they all go run to Bumgarner, and it struck me, and it's especially the case because he's 6'5" and 255 pounds. You don't see that type of scene except in Little League, where one guy, the kid who got hit puberty first, who throws 70 miles an hour, carries the team throughout the entire playoff run, and everyone runs around him, jumps around him, all the 9 and 10-year-olds, and he stands at a foot taller than everybody else, a head higher. That's the way it was. It was like he was the 12-year-old who could throw 80 miles an hour who hit puberty first, and they were all so happy, in part because of his personality.
Speaking of puberty, man, we're killing your voice today, man. Buster, hang in there, man. Keep drinking the water and lozenges. And I know
I'm fine.
It's been a long week for you. It's sleep deprivation month, as you say. Buster Olney with Armen and Levack on 104.5 The Team, brought to you by Mohawk Army Navy. Buster, you better than anyone in the country has done a great job of documenting the character of Madison Bumgarner with the stories and the great piece you had this morning on SportsCenter. Where does Madison Bumgarner rank with the characters in the game that you've covered?
Oh, he's right. He's right near the top. I just love collecting stories about him, and his teammates love talking about him. And the other day when I was preparing that piece, I stopped Madison and I said, "Look, I got to just double check a couple things with you." And I said, "Is it true that you got married in your jeans?" And he goes, "Yes." And then he went on to explain what happened. For his wedding, I don't know about for you guys, if you guys are married. I know for my wedding, it was this arduous process. It played out over 8 months.
Oh yeah.
With his wedding, there were no invitations sent out. There was no cake that was put together. There was no guest list put together. He and his wife, wife-to-be, decided that they were going to get married. So they went to the church where the preacher was, and the preacher brought in 2 witnesses of his own, and they got married. And that's how he did it. And the other great story I asked him about was, is it true that you gave your wife a steer for the wedding? And he said, "No, that's not true. I gave it for her birthday." and then I asked, I said, well, what kind was it? Because I told you guys before, I grew up on a dairy farm. And he said it was a Holstein. It was meant as a pet. And he goes, it was a bull, but now it's a steer. And that's Madison Bumgarner.
Buster Olney, thanks to Mohawk Army Navy on the team.
Buster, one of the biggest, what-if questions from last night.
Oh, boy.
Do I even have to say it? Alex Gordon.
No. Yeah, Alex Gordon and Mike Jershely, the third base coach. And, look, Alex Gordon, if you ask anybody with the Royals, he is the hardest-working player on that team. They're legendary stories as he made himself into gold left fielder, how when pitchers want to shag in left field, he chases them out of there during batting practice. Like, get out of here. And Ned Yost has gone to him a couple times and said, "Look, you got to stop shagging so many fly balls, or else I'm just going to have to give you a day off." That's how hard-working this guy is. However, 9th inning last night, he's facing Bumgarner. It's that looping line drive in the left center field. And if you look at the replay, Alex did what a whole lot of players, I bet you 90% of players now do this. They come out of the box. They're not at full speed. He probably was running 85, 90% effort. And then he sees the ball, skip past Blanco, and then he hits another gear. And then he's running at full speed. And he winds up, after Juan Perez was kicking the ball around out near the fence, Alex Gordon goes in at third base standing up. And I can tell you, my colleague Tim Kirch and I are watching this game side by side. And we know that Bumgarner's pitching. And we know there are 2 outs in the bottom of the 9th inning. And the circumstance that was going on, and we were almost windmilling together, like, you got to send him. You got to try for the inside the park, Little League, inside the park home run in this situation to try to tie the game. because you may not get another swing at this guy. And Jersley held him up, which we can debate that too, especially since Brandon Crawford was so far in the outfield. You know what? He probably would have been thrown out, but I'd at least wanted the shot to make him make that throw. And on top of that, if Alex Gordon comes out of the box running full speed the way we see Hunter Pence do all the time, you wonder if those extra stride or two that he gave Jersley may have impacted that decision. Instead, he winds up being stranded on third base.
Is this something that Alex Gordon for the rest of his life will replay in his mind?
I don't know him well enough to give you an answer on that, but when I wrote a column about it today, I wrote about what lies ahead for different people from this World Series, and I think for he and for Mike Jersley, it'll be the what-if question that will hang over them for the rest of their lives. What if he had come out of the box hard, and what if Jersley had sent him? What might have happened? Because I mean, after the play was over, Tim and I looked at each other and said, you got to send him. You got to make them make that throw, because you just didn't have any confidence that Salvador Perez was going to get a hit off Bumgarner.
Wow. And then, Buster, the bottom of the third, the Joe Panic, the way that he turned that double play and the way that turned the game, too, and the momentum.
Yeah, and I had a conversation with him right after the game. He was just, some 5 minutes after the game, and I said, because if you guys remember, he dives to his right, gloves the ball, flips it with his glove to Brandon Crawford, he turns to double play. And I said, Joe, how many times in your life have you used your glove in that way to flip the ball? And he looked at me, and he's a little grin on his face. He goes, I got to be honest with you. This is the first time in my life I've ever done that, made a play with my glove that way. He said that he practices it, and he said he hasn't been very good at it, but he's lying there in the dirt, and he's desperately trying to shovel the ball over to Crawford. He realized he couldn't get his bare hand on it, so he just shoveled it with his mitt, and he said it was just an instinctive play.
All right, Buster, when we look at the San Francisco Giants, are they a dynasty, number one? That's what we've been debating all day. And then number two, the odds of them keeping this team together and doing it again in another year or two.
To me, they're a dynasty. And look, you can go back to the 1943 to 53 Yankees. They won 5 in a row. Teams before 1976 were able to hold together dynasties more because the context was different, because they had the reserve clause. Teams could keep players in place. Now they move around a lot more. And on top of that, if you're the 53 Yankees, you win the American League, you play one round. You play the World Series. That's it. Now, in order to win the World Series, like the Giants did, you win the wild card game, then you have to go through 3 rounds of postseason. So to me, in the current context, the Giants winning 3 times in 5 years is the first dynasty since the 96 to 2001 Yankees. And I think it's worthwhile. They're going to be able to keep together most of the team. Buster Posey's under contract. Bumgarner's under an unbelievable contract that runs for 2019. And, the big question is going to be around Pablo Sandoval, who's a free agent right now. And they talked in the spring about a deal. They were far apart. But the Giants have a history of keeping their own guys. And I do think that, they'll give Sandoval maybe more of an offer than they would have otherwise. They certainly have concerns about his physical condition, whether it'll hold up. But they value the popularity of their players. That's why they kept Tim Lincecum last year. They value guys who've helped them win in the past. And Sandoval is someone who clearly, in October, goes to a different level. And I'll give you guys an example of that. Before Game 7, I walked up to him in the batting cage, and I'm sure you guys saw this in Game 6, that Yordano Ventura stared him down twice. After hitting a comebacker to the mound, he stared him down, and then he walked him and he stared him down. I don't know anything about the background of these two guys, so I said, Pablo, do you know him at all? Do you guys have some kind of a history? And he goes, no, I've never met him. And then he looked at me, and he's got that big panda smile. He goes, he's jealous. And I said, of what? He said, because I've won 2 World Series, and I'm going to win a 3rd one tonight. And he really didn't mean it as a rip on Ventura. It reflected the confidence of this guy, that he was absolutely convinced in that moment that they were going to win that night, and he was going to have something to do with it. And that's what I heard from Hensley Mullins, the former Yankees, now the Giants hitting coach, that he is absolutely an optimist no matter what's going on. And, boy, has that played well in October for the Giants.
Buster, the other news in baseball right now, Joe Madden reportedly agrees to a deal with the Cubs. You were on top of this from the rip. Can we expect tampering files to be charges to be filed?
I think so. I know that the Rays people are upset about how this played out. They feel like that they were like at the 1-yard line on a deal with Madden, and something changed dramatically. And suddenly he decided he didn't want to be their manager, and they didn't have a deal in place. So I do think they'll follow up, but I don't know how much they're going to get out of it. And to be honest, if Matt Silverman, who runs the baseball ops, were a close friend, I'd say, look, he was going to be a free agent anyway. Don't worry about it. Just move on and hold it against him privately. I just don't see a lot of upside in this. And, Madden is a great hire for the Cubs whenever they actually do finish it, push this across the line and announce it. He's a very progressive manager. He's had a lot of success. I think he's one of the 4 best managers in baseball, and it's a great situation for the Cubs and for Madden because that is a growing monster.
So is this the end of the curse of the Billy Goat?
Well, they've got some work to do, but by all accounts, people at other teams fully expect the Cubs will be one of the most aggressive teams in landing at least 2 of the elite starting pitchers who are going to be on the market in the next 13 months. This winter, Scherzer and Lester are free agents, James Shields. But then next year, David Price, Johnny Cueto, Jordan Zimmerman, and I think Jordan Zimmerman is the lock stock. He's going to wind up with the Cubs because he's from Wisconsin. He's a perfect fit for them. Maybe they're the team that trades for Cole Hamels this winter because the Phillies have put him out there on the marketplace. And you couple that pitching with the great position players they have coming up, the unbelievable payroll flexibility that they have right now. That, to me, is a team that, we could be talking about them being champion 2016, 2017.
And Buster, just briefly, Alex Rodriguez officially back today. What's expected of him? Is he going to have a press conference? As Yankee fans here, what should we expect this process now with him back?
To be honest, I don't know. Just being in the series, I haven't specifically asked the question about what plans they have for him in terms of is he going to do a press conference? I'm sure that type of thing will come up, and they'll want to get that out of the way. But I do kind of wonder, after everything the Yankees went through with him 2 years ago, if they're kind of going to be more like, you know what, buddy, you're on your own in terms of handling all the media stuff. I do know this, and I think I mentioned this to you guys last week. The Yankees will not count on him for anything for next year. They will go out and they will find a third baseman. They've already got Mark Teixeira. They've already got Carlos Beltran to be the DH. And I think Alex is going to go to spring training as a complete wild card where they're going to say, show us what you got, and if he hits, he plays. And if he doesn't hit, then we see some signs of a player who missed an entire year, who turns 40 next year, and their problems. And it wouldn't surprise me if they cut him at some point.
Buster Olney, brought to you by Mohawk Army Navy all season. And Buster, listen, you've been incredible. Thank you so much from our listeners, from us. Thank you for being with us all year. Take a couple weeks off, man. Enjoy the off season. And I'm sure we'll check in with you in the next month or so and see how everything's going, if that's all right with you.
That sounds great, guys. Have fun.
Hey, thanks so much, Buster. And have a safe flight today.
See you, man.